I'm Leah Lawrence.
And I'm her husband, Mitch Lawrence.
And you are listening to the Southern Spirits Podcast, where I regale my husband with Southern stories of the macabre, creepy, and strange.
And I drink.
So what are we drinking tonight, Mitchell?
Our beer tonight is Cinematic Sour, brewed and canned by Cahaba Brewing Company in Birmingham, Alabama. 4.2% alcohol by volume. And let's read the online description. Our Cinematic Sour is a Berliner Weiss fruited with passion fruit and pink guava, giving it a tropical, sweet, and fruity finish. What I have to say, this beer is truly excellent. I really like this sour a lot, Leah. Would you like some more of it?
Not right now, but It gives me a real brunchy vibe, you know?
Yeah, it does. Very fruity. The guava shines through, so it's got that real sharp bite on the end, and it's just really satisfying the whole way down. One of my favorites we've had on the show personally, and I'll buy it in personal life, I believe. 10 out of 10. It's pretty freaking good. Really looking forward to finishing them as well, whenever I can find the time. Leah, you may not get any of them. So.
Disagree.
Okay.
Because I personally picked that out because I love a sour, so... Yeah.
It's a really pretty can, too.
Just saying, you have all those IPAs in the beer drawer.
Yeah. That's fine. Really pretty can, purple with yellow writing, and it's just wonderful. If y'all can find this anywhere, I know it's all over Alabama, but if you can find it anywhere else, I recommend getting some. Our shot in the dark, 99 Bananas Schnapps, produced and bottled by Polynesian Products Company in Louisville? Oh, there we go. Louisville, Kentucky. 49.5% alcohol by volume, because the 99 on these bottles means they're 99 proof, y'all. And they have a shitload of flavors. So let's read the online description. Taste the sweet tropics and let your imagination take over. And that's it. That's all they have to say.
well, okay.
That's... It's try it and figure it out.
We make a really cheap product that will get you fucked up. Yeah. Here, have some.
But this is a favorite of mine. When I was in college, I had a friend that brought a bottle of this, and I was like, what the fuck is this? He's like, Bananas Schnapps. I'm like, there's no way that's good. He goes, trust me. And we made a cocktail with it. I say cocktail, and you'll hear it in a minute. It's not one of their recommended ones, but it's fucking awesome. So this gets an 8 out of 10 on ice. It's just a little bit too sweet. It's good. It's easy to drink, but it's very sweet.
All of the 99 products are just sweet as hell.
Yeah. Very sweet. Now, the cocktail is called a banana runt. And if you know what I'm talking about, those little candies called runts that are shaped like the fruits they're flavored as, tastes exactly like a banana one of those. And all you do is mix it half and half with orange soda. And it gets a 10 out of 10 because it's fucking awesome. That's the cocktail I was talking about. Just go buy some 99 bananas and mix it with Sunkist or any kind of orange soda. We just have Kroger brand orange soda. And this gets a 9 out of 10 overall. Not looking forward to shooting it, because it is very strong.
But from personal experience, don't drink a whole bunch of those in a row, or you will vomit.
Yeah, because they're super sweet.
They're very sweet, and they're very strong. And seriously, the only time that I've ever gotten nauseous and thrown up with alcohol was on 99 bananas mixed with Sunkist. So, just saying, tastes great. Be careful with it.
You will get the hangover from hell if you drink a whole bunch of these, because it's nothing but sugar going down, but it tastes real good. So, proceed with caution, but it's damn good. That's all that I have to say, Leah. That's it for the alcohols. What's coming up now?
Well, I guess we should go directly into a sassy Southern saying. Are you ready?
Yes. Just fucking do it. Like, I had to pick up the mouse that I dropped, and you're just over there making noises.
Well, I was trying to give you like that, like the echoey out. Okay,
it didn't work.
Sorry,
it didn't happen.
You can cut that out in editing.
Okay, we'll see.
Mitch is not going to cut that out in editing.
Nope.
Oh, all right. So our sassy Southern saying for the evening is, quote, like trying to baptize a cat.
Well, yeah, cats don't like water, so you can't dunk it, I guess. But that just is something's real hard to do, right, Leah?
Well, something that's super chaotic and goes against every, just something that is wrong at every turn and just becomes, it's just a chore and irritating and,
Yeah.
Like getting my kids to school in the morning is like trying to baptize a cat, that kind of thing.
That's offensive to the children, because now they've been compared to cats. But, kids do suck, so fuck them.
Rude. We don't have children, y'all, so there are no children being directly...
because they suck.
Insulted by this, but it's just a normal, just an everyday phrase. Kind of like trying to herd cats is one, but I always heard trying to baptize a cat because once again, I grew up as a Southern Baptist and ain't nothing more they like than dunking folks. So I guess you could sprinkle a cat instead. Mitch grew up as a Methodist, so that...
We didn't sprinkle. We the preacher dipped his finger in the holy water and then drew a cross on your forehead.
Well, that's still what they call sprinkling.
Yeah, kind of like Ash Wednesday, but just with water. So now you're like, ugh, I feel really icky.
No, the church that I grew up in has what they call a baptistry, and it's back behind the platform where everybody can see it, and it's just sort of a recess in the back wall that has a whole section of stuff behind it. But anyway, there's a big old bathtub behind it with a glass wall, and you go up there in like just a flowing white robe because why not? And it was on Easter Sunday that I got baptized, and I was standing on a box because I was too short to actually be seen up over that glass panel. And the preacher dunked me, and I have like a fear. I don't like being pushed under. Anyway, I was like clawing and fighting the preacher and like throwing hands, and it was...
You were throwing hands?
Yeah. Like I was just, I'm pretty sure I probably punched the preacher a little bit when that happened. But, it's a very startling experience, even though you know what's going to happen. And the water was kind of cold and, oh, bless it. It was mildly traumatic is all I'm saying. So if it's anything like that, I understand why the cat wouldn't want to be baptized. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Here's Leah throwing hands at the preacher. Good God.
That particular preacher probably deserved it, but it's fine. Yeah. Whatever.
In my experience, most of them do.
Not most of them, but that one particularly
I said
did.
In my experience. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just remember it very vividly, and it was a lot. So, anyway. Bless it.
So trying to baptize Aaliyah then.
Yeah, the phrase should be, oh my God, it was like trying to baptize Aaliyah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you are a nightmare. You go chaotic.
Well, I'd say I was probably in third grade at that point. And it was second or third grade. I don't remember exactly, but it was traumatic, not going to lie. Anyway, so the moral of the story is don't attempt to symbolically drown your child. I don't know, whatever. It's fun.
Yeah, but at least now you're saved. So, who knew that's all it took?
No, well, it's a whole nother thing. But anyway. So, are you ready for the very first story of the evening?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well,
I sure am.
We are going to be talking about the haunting at the St. James Episcopal Church in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh, I went to a St. James high school, Leah.
Were they also Episcopal?
No, the school was non-denominational.
Ah, nice.
Wasn't religious at all. It was secular completely.
Why did they call it St. James?
Honestly, I have no fucking idea. But it's been there for, I don't know, the 60s, 70s, something like that. That's how long St. James Private School has been there.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't know.
It's a cute little campus. You put me by there, but anyway.
Yep.
So that has absolutely nothing to do with St. James Episcopal Church in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Sure doesn't.
So it was built in 1739. So it's a very old church, and the very first grave was dug there just 5 years after the church was opened. So it's a very old cemetery as far as, cemeteries in the United States go. Because obviously in, Europe, there are graveyards that go way further back. But, for traditional Western style burials, this is one of the older cemeteries in the United States. And it's so old that a lot of the original tombstones have been weathered completely blank.
Jesus.
It's like so old, like I said, and the weather in that area is, erosive, I guess. So a lot of the tombstones don't have the names of the people on them anymore, or they're super faint and can only really be picked up through a rubbing or something like that. So,
oh God. So do they know all the people that are buried there then? Do they have records?
Not necessarily. Some of them they do and some of them they don't. And the person that we're going to be talking about, there isn't a record of which one exactly is their particular gravestone.
Oh, no.
So that's, sad. But this story is pretty well documented in, the local documentation.
Okay.
I don't know exactly,
records.
But the records, show that this person did in fact live and die in that area and was buried in that churchyard. So it happened about 1810, so a good deal after the church had been established and the cemetery was being in use for several decades at that point. And so this all kind of started in that early 1800s area. And there was a young man who was a lawyer, and his name was Samuel Jocelyn. And he was kind of interested in the supernatural and was just interested in, what happens to us after we die.
Okay.
Is there a continuation? Is there not? Is there a spirit realm? Is there not? That kind of thing. So he gets into this discussion with one of his friends, and they're talking about, hey, if I die first, I'm going to come back to you from the grave if it's possible. If you die first, you should come back to me from the grave if I die first, right? So they've made this sort of drunken haha pact in their youth, and they're like, oh, it's going to be great, haha, ghosts, etc.
Right.
Just like, if you're out drunk with a friend talking about shit like that, stuff happens, right?
I guess. I've never had that discussion.
Yeah, but you're like an atheist and shit, so.
Well, okay.
So, unfortunately for Mr. Jocelyn, he got dead a lot faster than he assumed he would.
Oh.
So, Mr. Jocelyn met his untimely end in a swamp in North Carolina in the middle of the night, only a couple of years after that barroom spiritualist conversation happened. But shot in the dark.
Oh, you don't need to try to spice it up over here with your... No, that's not important. I've got the sound effects for the spice.
Okay, I'll leave the spice to you as long
Thank
as
you.
it's not pumpkin, and we'll continue.
I've got the pumpkin spice right here.
So what caused the young man to be out in the middle of the night in the middle of a swamp in the first place?
Okay.
So, A, was it he was meeting a rival for a clandestine duel?
Oh.
Was he B, meeting the wife of a friend for a torrid affair?
Oh. In a swamp. Oh.
Right. And C, a domestic dispute with his wife.
Oh, God. Well, I really hope it's not the affair, because it's a swamp, y'all. That gives a whole new meaning to the phrase swamp crotch. I'm just saying.
Does
really
anybody
gross.
else use that phrase but us, though?
No, yeah, lots of people.
Okay, good.
Most everybody knows what a swamp crotch is, and it's rough. I'll say the duel, A.
You're incorrect.
Oh, God damn it. Let me get to the button. Okay.
He, in fact, had a fight with his wife.
Oh, okay. And they took it to the swamp?
No, he left.
Oh.
So
he just left and okay.
Yeah.
I thought they were fighting in the swamp.
So he and a few other families, had all gotten together to go hunting at a hunting lodge out on Honey Island Swamp. And they were, hunting and having a good time and whatever. And
My
apparently,
dogs are barking. Sorry.
You
Dogs.
good?
I'm fine. I'm saying the dogs are barking.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, she's the worst. So
yeah.
sorry, y'all. We have dogs that are not cooperating today.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but they went ahead and they were having a great time out there hunting in the swamp, I guess. And they were all back at the lodge, and we don't know what happened, but apparently Mr. Jocelyn got in a fight with Mrs. Jocelyn, and he was so pissed off that he was like, look, I can't even be in the same hunting lodge with you anymore. I'm going home. fuck y'all. So he got out on his horse, which, once again, this is the middle of a fucking swamp, in the middle of winter, in the middle of the night. And horses don't really have headlights. So it's a problem. I'm just saying. And so he was obviously upset. He was not thinking clearly and clearly not navigating very well. And the next day, they hadn't heard from him. So people go out looking for him to see, if he made it home, what's going on. And anyway, they found his body the next day, frozen in about 4 inches of water. And so
it was cold?
It was winter. That was part of what I said. Yes, winter.
You know how I am.
Yeah. So he was cold and frozen and all like, bleh. And so they brought him back, and they were trying to like revive him. They weren't sure if he was dead or just in a coma or what. But after a few days, they were like, yeah, he's dead. And there's not stethoscopes around at this point, I don't believe. I don't think they could really detect a very faint heartbeat or anything like that. So, maybe he's dead, maybe he's not. But he hasn't moved for a few days, so let's bury him.
Ugh. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Hasn't moved for a few days. Okay, I get it.
So they go ahead and they have a big old funeral. People come by. He's a lawyer. He's, part of the aristocracy in the area. And so people are like, oh, so sad. And they come to his funeral and they're all crying about it. And they eventually end up burying him in that church, St. James Episcopal.
Okay.
So they've buried him.
In the graveyard, right?
Not in the church. Not in the church itself, in the graveyard. Right. So they've buried his body. And exactly like what he said he would do in that barroom chat with his friend previously, he comes back to haunt their asses. So the man that he was talking with before, his last name was Hartselle, and they were also people that were in the hunting lodge hunting with them when he ran out, pissed off, and had the horse problem and the freezing and the dying part.
Yeah.
So he starts haunting this Hartselle man. So for 3 nights in a row, the friend keeps having these dreams of him showing up to him saying, dig up my grave. Dude, dig up my grave. Dig up my grave. Just over and over again. Dig up my grave. And the guy's freaking out. He's really upset. They were really close friends. And he was just, kind of grief-stricken, but also a little bit terrified. And he had remembered their previous, talk about, hey, come back to me when you're dead. I don't know that he really expected it to happen, so...
I wouldn't expect it.
No, definitely not. And so when this guy ends up, he's freaked out, and he goes to their other friend that was also there at the hunting lodge. And his name was Louis Toomer. He said, Mr. Toomer, this is what's been going on. I'm real freaked out. What should we do? And Mr. Toomer was initially like, I don't know. This sounds a bit ridiculous. I don't think we should dig up this body that we just buried a couple days ago. So they all go back to bed and nothing happened. No problem. And so the ghost starts coming to Mr. Toomer too, saying, hey, dig me up, asshole. Dig up my body. And so he's freaked out too. And at this point, they're like, all right. We need to dig up the grave, but we also don't want to be the fucking lunatics that dug up our friend's grave. Yeah. So what are we going to do? We're not going to get any kind of permission for this because it's fucking insane. What are we going to do? So they're like, okay, we can't keep being haunted by this jackass because it's scary. Let's just dig him up. So in the middle of the night, they go out to the church's cemetery and they get their shovels out and they start digging down to the coffin. And that's where they find something that's very uncomfortable and mildly terrifying.
What'd they find? What'd they find?
The lid of the coffin was askew.
Oh, no.
And so they open it up and they find him laying upside down. So usually when you're buried face up. He was upside down, face down, under the coffin lid, and his fingers had been absolutely bloodied to the bone, and he was in a dried puddle of blood because he had actually woken up buried alive and had suffocated to death attempting to escape. because obviously the weight of that dirt, there's no way you could really claw your way out of that.
You can't get out.
Yeah, so he, suffocated and died attempting to escape the buried alive situation that really freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they see what had happened and they're freaking out and they're like, holy shit, and they're very upset. And anyway, they call in the local constabulary and they bring in the coroner, and the coroner findings and stuff is part of the records of Wilmington. So it's pretty certain that this actually happened in some capacity. And so they tried to keep it quiet, because that's a terrifying fucking story and nobody needs that in their life. But
I don't need it right now.
No. But it really first appeared in in a pop culture kind of way when one of the descendants of one of the men, James G. Burr, he was an orator, a public speaker kind of thing, and he told that story in 1890 at the Wilmington Opera House. And the families were still alive at that point and could corroborate that this happened. And the haunting that still occurs in this house, in this graveyard, goes, like you would pretty much expect. So there's shadowy figures that are being seen leaning on different tombstones, which could be him and could be any of the other number of famous people that are buried in that area, because there are quite a few.
Okay.
But it was said to have been, in years past, a thing for kids, local teenagers, to sort of dare each other to go into the cemetery at night. Right. Because if you were really still and really quiet and, were listening really well, you could hear his still beating heart under the ground of the graveyard. And it would freak people out. And, normal teenager...
yeah, I'm the cool kid.
Stuff. Yeah, like I'm so brave I can listen to a heartbeat in a graveyard kind of thing.
Check me out.
I'm so cool. But yeah, so that is the story of how Mr. Samuel Jocelyn got buried alive and came back to let everybody know that he was not too happy about it.
Well, good for him. Good for him.
Self-advocating ghost.
He really pulled it off. Fuck off. Those are the buried alive, and or the one where we talked about the guy in the cave who swam down in the cave.
Oh yeah,
those are my least favorite. I really hate them. I don't like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Period. It's terrifying.
The buried alive one doesn't bother me as much as the cave thing does, because I can't read stories about cave exploration or cave diving or even just spelunking, the people that go into caves that aren't flooded in water. You could, I was watching some YouTube video and they're like, oh yeah, and this person accidentally fell down this thing and they literally, there was absolutely no way they could get their body out, so they just sort of smuggled a cell phone down there so they could talk to their kids for the last time.
Oh, fucking
how
ass.
the actual fuck do you...
the most terrifying one for me, and you can find it readily available online, the story of it, and there are drawings of it. I may have talked about it before, not to deviate too much, but there was a guy spelunking. He fell down a chute head first, and they had a way to get him out, and they were getting him out. Something went wrong, and he fell down further, and they absolutely could not get him out without breaking, putting his body in half to do it. So they just left him there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You can find that. I don't know the name of it, but it's a very famous one.
I just... see?
And it's terrifying. And that's why I will never go in a cave system. Just unless I know it's safe and I know that people know. I would never do anything like that. First of all, I can't fit anywhere.
I was just saying, first, we're a little bit chunky to fit into any of those crevices, so we probably don't have much to fear from that. But you're right, I couldn't do it. The only cave systems that I've ever been in are the ones that are tourist traps, where you go in and look at the pretty things, and
The
they go in every
stalactites
day.
and the stalagmites.
Yeah, like I've been to Ruby Falls, DeSoto Caverns. There's one in Tennessee called the Lost Sea where you take a boat under an underground lake. That one's fun. But like I said, if it's not a tourist trap with an elevator down, I'm not going in there.
Caves terrify me.
Yeah.
And there's a giant cave system just in America.
Yeah.
America has a gigantic system of caves.
Several gigantic systems of caves.
Yeah, and I don't want to
like
be
actually
in any of
Mammoth
them.
Caves is something that I've been thinking about because there's lots of sections of it that have lots of interesting little stories about it and hauntings and stuff. That I
People
would love
falling
to do
down and
something.
getting buried
Yeah.
down there.
Nope, not for me. That's fucking terrifying. So
I'm good, and I don't want to do this ananymore.
I'm
So I
sorry.
think we should move on to the second story.
all right, let me try that again.
Do we have a happy one this time?
Huh?
Do we have a happy one?
I think so. It's one that it's more of a folklore, true crime kind of.
Oh, true crime's very happy.
Well, but it's not true crime where the people that get killed are good people. It's
okay.
like fuck those guys kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm here for it. Anyway, we're talking about North Carolina again. It's Robeson County, and we are going to be talking about the Lowry War.
Okay.
So during the Civil War and like previous to that, okay, let me start over.
Yep.
Okay.
Previous to the Civil War, time did not exist.
No.
Right.
Oh, bless it. Some people around here think that, but turns out not true.
No, not that it didn't exist. It's just that it hasn't moved on. That's
Right.
what we're thinking about that.
So in, pre-Civil War, mid-19th century was not a great time in our country's history for Native Americans, just like most
Again, Leah,
time.
there are some people who would argue with that.
Most time, previous to white people showing up, or, post-white people showing up is not great for most Native Americans, just because, white people. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
So in this particular point in time, the policy of the U.S. government was, we know that you have lived here for millennia, but we want you to move because
It wasn't that.
White
It was, we
people.
know you've lived here for millennia, but fuck you.
exactly.
This land can grow corn. Leave.
I was like cotton, tobacco, etc. Lots of different crops, but it was basically we don't want you to live here anymore, so we're shipping you off to Oklahoma. And
It's that old adage of we bought this land, and the Native Americans going, what?
I didn't get any money from this shit.
It's like
You sure?
like that Eddie Izzard joke with like the rabbits. Like you're putting these right here in our board. We live here. I don't. What are you doing? And same thing. But we bought it. But you can't. We don't. It's not for sale.
I didn't get any cash for this, bro.
Right. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You bought it.
So the Cherokee Nation actually basically sued the United States government, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, yeah, federal government, you can't fucking kick them out. But unfortunately, at the time, Andrew Jackson was the president.
Yep.
And he is a notorious douchebag. just the worst. Well, I wouldn't say the worst president, but pretty damn fucking close. I have a very deep-seated despisal of Andrew Jackson, but anyway.
Well, it's a good thing I'm naming the episode Andrew Jackson is a notorious douchebag.
I would be here for that. But he basically famously said to the Chief Justice, basically, I've made a decision, I'm going to enforce it, fuck y'all. And so he, instead of, following the law at this point, decided to deport all of the Native Americans in that area via the Trail of Tears.
You're here illegally. What? We were here. You came here. You're illegal.
Precisely. So the Trail of Tears happened, and that was the mass deportation of lots of Indian nations into the Oklahoma territories, where a lot of them are still, being oppressed by the United States government till today.
Yep.
Great, right?
See the oil pipeline.
The
in
oil pipeline.
Oregon? Isn't that Oregon?
No, that's the
am I thinking?
Dakotas, one of the
Dakotas, yeah. There you
I don't
go.
remember which one. I think it's South Dakota. But the whole, not allowing them to vote
Yeah.
kind of thing. Just anyway.
You can have your reservations, but those aren't U.S. territory. So There you go.
I just
right? Fuck you.
I'm sorry. I need to get off of this, or I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, we need
for
to
the
stop.
rest of the
but
time.
Suffice to say, Leah and I are moving to Canada if November doesn't go well.
I don't know about Canada.
Somewhere besides fucking here. I can't take it anymore. I'm at my wit's end.
I'm sure you are.
I really am.
Bless it. Anyway, so basically, the Trail of Tears happened. There was a mass deportation of lots of the Native Americans into there. So it left very few tribes of Native Americans in North Carolina at the time. But there were a few that were still left behind. For whatever reason, didn't go, weren't deported, etc. And around the time of the Civil War, around 1861, they still lived there in scattered tribes, bands, farms, etc. And one of the groups that were still left there was the Lumbee Nation. And there were a lot of them, but not enough for it to be like a massive population, and they lived under very strict racial laws that kind of protected the slavery system in the South. And the Native Americans were all classified as free people of color. They weren't slaves, but they also didn't have any rights because they weren't white. And that category, the free people of color, also included, freed African Americans, and just about anybody else that wasn't white, and that wasn't a slave. So, unfortunately for them, though, the slave-owning white folk in the South weren't super thrilled about having free people of color nearby, because they believed they were dangerous, specifically because of the slave rebellions, Nat Turner's slave rebellion specifically, though complete.
So even back then, they were going, we don't go to that side of town.
Pretty much.
Fucking for real?
Yeah.
That side of town is dangerous.
Yeah.
That's where all the bad stuff happens.
They don't,
because we put everyone there and told them you aren't worth anything.
I don't mean that it was dangerous to them to show up. It's dangerous because they believed that they were going to radicalize their slaves and help them get free, which is exactly what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Which
so
is
who
pretty
gives a
great.
fuck? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Remember, y'all, only 1% of people own slaves. Don't ever think anything different.
Bless it. Anyway, so they passed, obviously, a lot of laws to restrict the freedoms of the free people of color, including the Lumbee Nation. And they were banned from voting, obviously. They were banned from serving on juries. They were banned from possessing firearms, which it was sort of a big deal.
Yeah.
And they...
I wonder how that would go today, in today's America.
Not too good.
What about my Second Amendment?
But anyway, the Lumbee Nation mostly lived in sort of scattered farms. Basically, they got the worst land outside of town that it was possible. There was a lot of poverty in the area. Just a very difficult living, very hard to basically survive in that area because there was little opportunity. You couldn't sell your wares to the white folks because they were already producing the majority of the stuff. Like there was no trickle down economics at work here,
But it does work. It does, Leah. Give the rich people the money and let them figure it out. You know that.
But they were, really struggling to make a living, any kind of survival stance. So during the Civil War, unfortunately, there were these things called the Home Guard. And we've talked about this in lots of other stories previous. But the Home Guard was basically a bunch of militias in the South that were discharged soldiers, men who were disabled to the point where they couldn't serve at the front, but still were being forced to be useful in some capacity for the Confederacy. Just anybody that couldn't fight but needed to do something, they were in the Home Guard. Older men, younger men, that kind of thing.
Kind of like a neighborhood watch.
Exactly, but they were terrorists. They were literally domestic terrorists.
So the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, they actually did. The Ku Klux Klan did actually evolve out of the Home Guard.
Right, because it sounds like we are, the quote unquote genetically superior, but don't look at our teeth or our ears. And we are defending, quote unquote, our neighborhood, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, our town.
And so they were the ones that were
race.
tasked with pressing everybody else into service towards the Confederacy. So there were pockets of places where they didn't take sides. They were Union sympathizers. They just didn't fucking want to fight for the Confederacy because why would you? And so the Home Guard was in charge of basically forcing these people to work or join the army or whatever, so they could advance the Confederacy's cause. So the main target of some of these Home Guard groups was, in fact, these communities of free people of color. So any of the Native Americans that were still in the area, any freed black people, anybody that wasn't specifically working towards a Confederate goal, were captured and forced to work and build different forts, installations. Exactly.
They were free people, but they became slaves.
They were impressed, I think is the word that you use. But yeah, for the most part, they were, either you come work for us or you die.
Right.
So,
Let's not beat around the bush here. Being imprisoned in America means that you are a slave. So it's this is the basis for the American, not judicial, correction system.
Pretty much.
Yeah. We're going to put you... Slavery's gone, but we're still going to get free labor off of you.
Pretty much.
Because you, quote-unquote, are a criminal. Right?
Yeah.
I'm saying a lot of quote-unquotes today.
Yeah. So, to escape being impressed by the Home Guards, a lot of the Lumbee and the freed African Americans, escaped slaves, Union sympathizers, they all left town and they retreated into the swamps and the forests and the mountains that were indigenous to this particular area. And they basically just made a society, a guerrilla society out in the woods, and they basically defended themselves in their own little patch of the woods that was difficult to get to. And, if you didn't know the area, you'd get lost. And they knew it like the back of their hand, so that's where they retreated. And they ended up deciding to band together and make raids for supplies. And it turned into, stealing a little bit of this and that from the plantations, helping free slaves from plantations, that kind of thing. And it turned out that a lot of the rich white people in the area weren't too thrilled about that going on. And one of the bands of these Lumbee and etc. kinds of people was called the Lowry family because their last name was Lowry. And before the war broke out, they had about a small, like a 2,000 acre farm. They weren't the poorest of the poor, but they weren't, rich plantation owners by any means. But they were members of the Lumbee Nation that had, had a decent outcome and they were farming. Well, that all didn't turn out too well because once again, it's during the Civil War and they were scared of people of color. So they basically ended up having all of that land seized. And a lot of the documentation in the area call the Lowry family Negro, but we're pretty sure that most of them were Lumbee, but there were also probably intermarried with African Americans, other nations and tribes and stuff like that. So it was a mixed ancestry kind of group, but I think the majority was, Native American, the Lumbee tribe. Okay. But the documentation is so wildly just, it doesn't match up because white people can't tell the difference, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They couldn't be bothered to tell the difference.
Exactly. It was sort of a dehumanizing thing to just lump everybody together. If you're not white, you're other.
Right.
And so that was sort of that.
Would you like a modern day example of that?
No.
Okay.
A lot of the documentation from that time period does not match up as to who these people are, where they came from, even their race or nationality. So if you see things that say they're different or whatever, it's just because white people were the ones writing things down at the time and they weren't great at it. So
kind of like all the people coming into Ellis Island where they just changed everyone's names because that's not white enough. We can't understand
so we can't spell that. So you're going to be Mr. Smith from now on.
Yeah.
Continue. you know.
Speaking of, do you know where the term for an Italian American, you know, the word, I don't want to say the word, WOP. Do you know where that comes from?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm going to say it.
Don't say it.
It's not really a bad term, but it's.
I don't want you to issue any kind of racial slur at all, even if it's educating me.
The term for an Italian American, I'll tell you after we're done here. It is a racist term for an Italian American, and anyone out there will know what I mean. It is just the letters WOP. I won't say the word, okay? But that's it. And it stands for without papers. So it's people that came into Ellis Island and they, you know, registered themselves, and that's when people changed their names, but they didn't have documentation of who they were.
Yeah.
So that's where the term came from. It was just the letters WOP.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I also didn't know that was a racist term. So.
It technically it is. I don't believe there's a lot of bad stuff associated with it. I think it's just like a term, you know, but it is most definitely this is an Italian person term. I know that about it.
It still seems like a slur, and I don't want to say it.
It is a slur.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. But again, I've spelled it for you.
Thanks.
It's just what they say. So, there you go.
All right. Well, that was interesting.
Anyway, I just wanted to tell you. There you go.
All right. But anyway, so the Lowry family has basically moved into the swamps at this point, and they kind of started recruiting other people, other members of the Lumbee, other escaped slaves, other free people of color, other Union sympathizers. So they had a little bit of everybody. They had white folks, they had black folks, they had Native Americans. Anybody that showed up that did not want to be associated with the Confederacy sort of started grouping together, and they formed their own sort of militia situation, just to sort of defend themselves and to fight back against all of the terrible things that the Home Guard was doing to them and their population.
Right.
So in December of 1864, the members of the Lowry family stole something from the plantation of James Barnes, and that would spark a 7-year-long feud with the local aristocracy that is most commonly called the Lowry War. So shot in the dark.
Here we go. Oh, wait. I didn't hit the button.
What did they steal?
Okay.
Did they steal A, 1 horse, B, 2 pigs, or C, 3 goats?
Oh, I really like this. I'm going to say 3 goats.
You're wrong. It was 2 pigs.
God damn it. This is going to be a terrible day. Oh, I hit it twice. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. So they did steal 2 pigs from the plantation owned by a man named James Barnes. And James Barnes was an asshole. And he was actually the leader of a group of a home guard. And so he led this home guard to arrest the Lowrys. But unfortunately for him, a gunfight broke out. And he was not a good gunfighter. And the Lowrys were. So they ended up killing him. And at this
maybe
point,
not good. I mean, I know you said he's an asshole, but like, come on.
I'm sorry, but he owned and contributed to the slavery system.
Right.
He's a fuckface.
I just wanted to cover my ass there. I said
Fine.
good, and somebody died, and then I was like, wait a second. Was that the good guy or the bad guy?
It was the bad guy.
Okay.
I think it's the bad guy. I guess his family might not have agreed at the time, but
Well, fuck them too.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So the Lowrys and their supporters and, you know, the people that they had sort of recruited into their group started waging an open guerrilla warfare against the local plantation owners. And they even broke into the county courthouse and they took a ton of guns and ammunition from the armory, and they took all of it back to their setup, their location in the swamp. And with their own guns, they launched a series of nighttime raids against the local plantations, stealing food and supplies and sometimes even liberating some of their slaves. And they were distributing them to all of the poor people that were still living in the swamps, all of the local people that, you know, had nothing.
Okay.
So they were having this Robin Hood-esque kind of operation where they're breaking into the plantation owners' stuff, freeing a few people, stealing all the food, and redistributing it so the rest of their population doesn't starve to death.
That sounds awesome.
Yep, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, the Home Guard was really pissed about this because, you know, a group of people of color were, you know, successfully fucking up their system.
Thwarting them.
Yes,
thwarting.
they were thwarting them. That's a good word.
Thwarting.
And they weren't happy about that. In fact, they were very upset about that. So in March of 1865, the Home Guards raided the farmhouse of Alan Lowry, who was the very elderly patriarch of this family of people that had retreated into the swamps.
Mm-hmm.
But he was still living in his farmhouse because he was super duper fucking old. And they found guns there. And as I had mentioned before, there was a law against having guns if you were not a white man.
Yep.
So they were like, hey, you're breaking the law. So not only did they
this is like a citizen's arrest? Like, this isn't even an actual arrest.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, pretty much. The Home Guards were organized technically by the Confederacy, but they were just militias of assholes that, you know, couldn't fight in the war, so they were going to make their weight and their power known to the people that were defenseless. You know, funds. So
it's always fun to pick on the little guy, though, right?
I guess so.
You can't have anything. Why do you have nothing?
So basically, in retaliation for all of the nighttime raids and stuff that the Lowry family had been perpetrating on local plantations, the militia decided that they would basically lynch this guy. So they did, and his youngest son, William. So Alan and William were basically executed without trial of any sort. And that pissed off the Lowry family pretty bad, as you would expect.
Yeah.
So these executions were what sparked this feud, this war, and it actually went on for about 7 years. So the Lowry family was actually pretty instrumental in helping end the Civil War as well. So you know about General Sherman and his march to the sea.
Of course.
And after,
tell everybody else, because maybe they don't know.
So General Sherman, basically his campaign was to cut the Confederacy in half and basically break off lines of transportation and communication so that the Confederacy couldn't supply themselves and would basically self-implode.
It would be disorganized, of course.
So he's the one that burnt Atlanta, you know,
right.
The whole Gone with the Wind scene, the burning of Atlanta.
Yeah.
They went all the way through Atlanta, they hit Savannah, and they turned back up the coast, and they marched upwards. So they made it through, you know, several different states and all that. They had been successful thus far, but then they reached North Carolina. And once they reached North Carolina, he's wanting to go through North Carolina and cut through that and further disrupt transportation and shipping routes and stuff like that. So he gets to Robeson County, where we're talking about where the Lowry gang is, the Lowry family, excuse me. And on March the 9th of 1865, they show up in this county, and unfortunately, there's torrential rain. It's been raining for weeks.
Yeah.
It's muddy as hell.
Called it Sherman's Rain.
It's muddy as hell. The creek beds are, you know, swollen. There's rivers running crazy. There's flooding everywhere. You can't march a massive troop through this area because they don't know the area. It's real gross. All of the roads are impassable. How do we get the fuck through? So all of a sudden, out of this downpour, a bunch of like guerrilla forces sort of come out of the rain and say, "Hey, Mr. Sherman, have we got a path for you?"
Listen, Mr. Sherman.
So the Lumbees, the Lowry family, show up to General Sherman, and they're like, "Hey, we live in these swamps, and we know exactly how to get through this. Would you like a guide through the swamps and the forest?" And he said, "Yeah." So according to Sherman, they did, quote, "the damnedest marching I ever saw," and they went through this section of North Carolina, and it ended up allowing them to basically cut through and sort of intersect General Joseph Johnston from the Confederate. And anyway, he ended up surrendering on April the 26th. And previous to that, the General Lee surrendered to Grant as well in April. And so basically that ended the Civil War. Yeah. And the Lowry tribe aided that in happening faster than I think it would have otherwise. So,
well, I have a question. Because I'm not much of a history person, not much of a Civil War person. I don't know too much about it. So when they split the army, did the Confederate Army seriously become two sections where two separate generals had to surrender for each individual faction, pretty much?
So as there wasn't a lot of communication, there was very little. They had cut down all like telegraphs and all that stuff. There was very little communication that wasn't over the ground with a horse and a dude riding to give you the message. So when the surrender happened at Appomattox, it took a few weeks after that to disseminate the information that the war was over. Yeah. And it took several months, in fact, to get it to all of the different locations for things to stop fighting. So while the official end of the Civil War happened a couple weeks earlier than the surrender that I was talking about, it just took that long, for them to figure it out. So multiple surrenders happened almost simultaneously, but the official end was the one at Appomattox.
I guess I was kind of asking if they had a system in place to, like, if we ever lose communication for this amount of time, you are now in charge of this area, of this, whoever you have contact with. And therefore, you keep fighting for however long it's deemed necessary for you to keep fighting.
I mean, I think that was just in general, because each general had their own troops and army, as it is. So they would all have, general plans of what they should be doing and all of that stuff. But each general was sort of on their own to figure things out within the scope of their grand scheme of, what they were trying to accomplish. So,
right. Yeah.
I don't know if any of that made sense, but I was a really big history fan as a child, and the Civil War particularly. And we actually went to Appomattox with my grandparents as a kid, and I have never seen more fucking gnats in my life. Like that, it was really cool to be there, and they have a lot of different places set up and original buildings, and they have films to watch, and the surrender at Appomattox. There's a really cool place, highly recommended. But we went in the middle of fucking summer, and I have literally there were swarms of gnats, just the biggest. Just gnats everywhere, and we were just batting them away. All of the pictures that I have from Appomattox are just like gnats covering everything. It was fucking miserable every time you walked outside, and that is generally the only thing that I remember about that trip specifically to Appomattox was all the fucking flies.
Well, you heard it here first, y'all. If you want to go to Appomattox, don't go during gnat season.
It was really rough, I'm not going to lie. But anyway, that was just sort of a side thing. They were, pretty instrumental in helping Sherman get through North Carolina to end that particular portion of the war. But the Lowrys were more known specifically for what I was talking about before, the Lowry War. Yeah. So the Lowry Gang is what they, the media in the area started calling it. And they targeted different areas of, wealthy white plantation owners and people that were generally, being assholes to people of color. That was, their sort of MO. They had fights with corrupt law enforcement agents. There was assassinations and the like. It was a very kind of clandestine group of what I would call freedom fighters, what they at the time called swamp outlaws.
Oh, I was in a band called Swamp Outlaws. I've been in a lot of bands, y'all.
Yeah. So a lot of the local people loved this group of people because they were, benefiting their social justice fight. They were taking care of problems that couldn't be, taken care of by normal means, because all of the people that were the corrupt people in power were the ones that could, technically legally take care of things,
Right.
So when there was no recourse for fixing any of the protests that they had about the way that they were governing, the Lowrys would take care of it.
Yeah.
And, maybe not the most kind and happy way to take care of things, but they had no other course of action at that point.
Right.
So,
I mean, what are you supposed to do?
yeah.
Can't they just peacefully protest, right, Leah?
Apparently not.
Well, I mean, right?
Like I said, they took to the swamps.
They're doing it wrong. No matter what you do, it's wrong.
Yeah, they, at this time, and you had mentioned the Ku Klux Klan previously, but it had been established by this point from out of, local home guard militias. It started in Tennessee, and it, had sort of become, a cultural meme. Different groups of people that had the like-mindedness had organized into Ku Klux Klans at this point. And obviously the Lowry gang was not thrilled about that, because they were killing people because they weren't white, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
And so they ambushed and killed the local leader of the Ku Klux Klan.
I was hoping it was Nathan Bedford Forrest, but I
it
guess
wasn't, but close enough. If that had been the case, it would have made me very happy. But it was the local head person in charge. I don't know if at this point they had started calling them Grand Dragons or Wizards or whatever they call them.
I will say the only good thing that has come out of a Ku Klux Klan thing ever. Y'all look up the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest.
It's so fucking funny.
It will make you so happy that someone thought this is how we honor him, and he looks like a fucking cartoon character on the back of a horse.
It's in Nashville, right?
I think so.
It's in Nashville. It's a Nathan Bedford Forrest statue, and Jesus Christ, y'all.
It is the best
It's like
thing.
Someone allowed a 10-year-old that kind of knew what a person looked like, but didn't quite.
To sculpt something. Like, not draw it. To sculpt something.
It. And the horse is kind of okay, but Nathan Bedford Forrest's face.
Oh my God.
I hope he looked exactly like that in real life.
That's what I was about to say. I hope that is an accurate representation of Nathan Bedford Forrest. It is the best thing. Just Google Nathan Bedford Forrest statue. You will see a close-up of his face, and you will go, these fucking white assholes.
Like, you can take down the rest of them because fuck them, but that one needs to stay because they should feel their shame.
Because
like,
it's literally a joke. This is
so
to
bad.
quote unquote. Here's another one. Quote unquote honor Nathan Bedford Forrest. And that's why it's so. It has to stay.
Like, bless its heart, they did not try. It was so bad.
I love it so much.
But anyway, they ended up killing the local leader of the Ku Klux Klan. And in fact, the leader, Henry Lowry, became one of the most famous outlaws in North Carolina, and he had a $12,000 reward for his, capture, which is a lot of money at that point in time.
That's a shitload.
Their exploits were written about in papers all over the country, New York, Chicago. Everybody was talking about these people. Obviously, some people favorably, some people, mostly newspapers in the South, called them the African Ku Klux because they were terrorizing white people, which, no, they weren't. They were terrorizing white people that were killing black people.
Right.
Fine.
Like, that's an actual militia.
Yeah.
That's an actual neighborhood watch. You fucked up and we're going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe
and like I said, they weren't murdering all willy-nilly here and there. It was, targeted at people that I personally think deserve it. But, maybe that makes me a bad person, but I'm fine with it if it does.
It does, Leah. Trial of your peers. Yeah. Jury of your peers.
It's fun.
Let them decide your guilt, even if you've killed people.
So in February of 1871, they made their most famous robbery, and they attacked a depot in Lumberton, North Carolina, and they got away with a safe containing $20,000 in cash. And after that, the Henry Lowry man sort of falls off the record. No one really knows if he was killed in that. A lot of people think that he decided to move out west and started living there under a different name. But there's really not a lot known about him after that particular raid happened, and they successfully got away with it. And after he sort of either died or moved away, the Lowry gang was taken over by his son Steve. But Steve didn't really want to continue all of the raids, and so when he got shot by bounty hunters in 1874, it basically put an end to the Lowry War, which kind of sucks. And the legacy of the Lowry family itself is very heated depending on what side of issues you come down on.
Before you continue, I have a question, though.
Go ahead.
So the Steve guy stopped doing the raids. Why was there still a bounty on his head? Because the army was still a thing from years previous?
Well, it was still a thing because the local constabulary had it out for him because they were a bunch of people of color in the woods still fucking up their situation.
So they
were still mad about it.
Right. So they weren't stealing anymore, but were they still like providing community justice, quote unquote, again? Here we go.
I don't even think it was that at the point. I think it was more that it had happened in the past. They were still pissed about it, and they found this guy, so they shot him.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, why shoot him? Because
he was technically still the leader of this family. He was the eldest patriarch in this group of people that they didn't like. So
Dog barked in the middle of my point.
Yeah, well, he does that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it sounds like what you're saying is he decided, I'm now the head of it, and now we're going to live a peaceful, solitary existence. So, I don't know if they were... This is what I'm saying it sounds like. I don't know if this is accurate. But we're not going to go steal from anyone anymore. And then they came and shot him anyway. That's what it sounds like. Pretty
much. I mean, I think they were still conducting small raids here and there, but for the most part, there wasn't much going on. But once again, he was sort of their target, and they shot him.
So they shot him for a symbolic, hey, we got the non-white guy.
We finished the Lowry gang. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And like I said, the Lowry gang is very controversial, just depending on how you feel about it. There's a History Channel documentary about them that is actually not about aliens and is pretty good, but it's an older one. And it, depicts them as freedom fighters, justice warriors.
Pre-2006 History Channel.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a really cool one, and a lot of people, think that they were social justice, like actual warriors, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And the Lumbee Nation itself has like an award that's named after them. That's their highest honor that they can bestow. So obviously they're pretty into it, which totally get. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But obviously other people think that they were just a band of thieves and outlaws and cutthroats, and they call them swamp outlaws, and
there are very few people who think that, and I can guess a couple of characteristics about them.
Exactly. So anyway, so whether you think they're the saints or the sinners in this particular situation, it's a great
dashboard confessional song. Continue.
It's a really interesting part of North Carolina history. It's a very interesting part of just sort of the rebel justice that was happening in the area in the absence of law enforcement that gave a fuck about people that weren't white. So I don't know. It's an interesting part of American history that you aren't taught in American history as a school. Yeah. There's just so many interesting different facts and stories and clans and like just so much stuff that as a child you are not presented with when you're talking about Civil War history or even, American history in general. And I like learning about those stories and sharing them because I think it's interesting because most of the stories that you're fed in school are from the perspective of, national pride and that kind of thing. And I really like to focus on stories that were told by, people of color, people that were, in the situation at the time that weren't the white guys that won, I find that more interesting. I find it, an authentic view of a different part of the story. And anyway, I like it. I think it's interesting, and I thought y'all should know about it. So yeah, that's about it.
Well, thank you for thinking I should know about it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Don't you feel enlightened now?
I sure do. I very much do. Are we done with that second story?
Yeah, that was everything.
Okay.
And most of that information came from NCpedia, and the Lumbee Nation has like a website article with that as well. And just an off reference at the bottom of that. Apparently, the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh actually has a revolver that was owned by the Tom Lowry guy, and they have that on display there. So. I think that's neat. I have never
really neat.
been to Raleigh.
No. I want to go to the Carolinas. Like, I want to take a trip.
I would love to take you to Charleston. I've only ever been to Charleston, and it is absolutely stunning.
I'll take you to Charleston.
Okay, take
Don't
me
bring
to
that
Charleston, baby. But I'm not getting on one of those clippity-cloppity horse carriages because they scare me. But
Yeah. We'll see. If it is a horse carriage that's pulled, that's like that bicycle one we went on in Chattanooga, where we're drinking the whole time, I'll do that.
No, these
The
are
horse can pull it.
like supposed to be like romantic carriage rides through historic.
Oh, no. There need to be other
Yeah.
people. I'm not
No.
going with just you.
No, there are lots of ghost tours and
Yep.
that kind of stuff in Charleston that I think would be really fun. But
Excellent.
it's a really lovely area. I was there actually. I was there in a service organization, and we were roofing houses for people in poverty there. So I only got to see the historic parts of Charleston for a day. So I'm speaking out of my ass just a little bit, because most of what I saw was poverty-stricken neighborhoods and tarred roofs. But you know, the parts
which is
that I did
generally
see of
the historic
Charleston-
part of any
Yeah.
town. So,
Yeah.
you know, just let it go, right?
But the food, man.
They have
some
good food?
some of the local churches were the ones that provided food at the local camps or the work sites that they were doing. And our work site was sponsored by this it was a historically black Baptist church. Oh my God, the food, y'all.
Yep.
Those ladies brought in the best food that I've ever eaten in my life. Like, just
Soul food.
oh, it was so good. But
I
anyway,
want that so bad.
the macaroni and cheese and the fried chicken was the
Yeah.
best food that I've ever eaten. Like,
Yeah.
just absolutely incredible.
It sounds
Those
amazing.
people-
And you are making me so hungry, because I'm going to go full disclosure right now about what's happening today. We release at noon on Sundays. Right now, it is 11:01 a.m. on Sunday, because we had a very busy week that included power outages because of the hurricane, and we have not recorded yet. So we are recording on Sunday, and right now it's 11 o'clock, and I'm fucking hammered. I want some brunch. I want some goddamn fried chicken. I want some macaroni and cheese, and I can't drive. So, Leah, you're cooking or you're going to get something?
Well, I was going to say, I'm sober as hell because you missed all the shots and I've only taken a sip of beer. So I will go drive and get you whatever you want, my love.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say whatever I want.
Well, within reason. But I promise you it will not be as good as that fucking macaroni and cheese from those little old ladies in Charleston. Oh
I'm
my
so
God,
upset.
the best food. But anyway.
Well, I have 1 hour to get this posted. So
All right. Well, would you like to go ahead and toast so
Yeah.
we can get you to getting that taken care of?
Give me a toast. This week has sucked.
All right, everybody, hoist your goblets high into the sky at 11 in the morning. Let's toast to day drinking.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, Sunday Fun Day. Hashtag.
Oh, bless it. Anyway, so let's toast. For the love of all things good, give my frozen corpse a wake. I don't want to be the next to be buried by mistake. Known by some as outlaws, to others known as saints. A toast to those who did what they must to live without restraints. Drink!
Yeah, very good toast this week, Leah.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks.
Maybe I'm just drunk at 11 o'clock
I
in the
think
morning.
it's
I don't
just
know.
you're drunk, but fine. How about you outro us, my
Well,
love?
when you wake up on Sunday and start drinking at 8:30, you know, things tend to be a little bit happier on Sunday than maybe they are. I don't know. But I will say, thank y'all so much for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Send us an email, southernspiritspodcast@gmail.com. Join the Patreon if you want to give us some more beer and liquor money. That would be fucking awesome. Patreon.com/southernspiritspodcast. Send us a postcard to P.O. Box 1743 in Hartselle, Alabama, 35640. And listen to Trailer Trashy, the other show on our network. just find that wherever you get your podcasts. And I believe that's it, Leah.
That should be everything.
Okay, thank y'all so much, and we will see you next time.
Bye, y'all.